10 tons of cocaine, 95 million in cash, one fortress that seemed untouchable. And yet, at 4:20 a.m., 2 U.S. bombers tore it from the map. 6 days earlier, drones had quietly mapped every movement inside the compound. Each second, another piece of the ambush took shape. But the final plan hinged on something unexpected, a tactic called surround and suffocate. It's the kind of move that either wins fast or leaves no one coming home. Let's find out how it became one of the most precise jungle raids ever executed. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. The week began with Fuerte Laguarita buried under thick jungle canopy, invisible to the eye but not to the lens. The Tren Delano Cartel had spent 4 years turning that patch of wilderness into what they called a safe world of their own making. They laid concrete walls nearly 10 feet high around the perimeter, braced with steel sheets imported from scrapyards in Argentina. Inside, they parked rows of armored trucks plated with improvised slat armor, the kind used to stop grenade impacts. 2 lookout towers rose above the canopy, each wired to homemade radio jammers meant to knock out any electronic listening attempt. From overhead, it looked like a forgotten clearing, covered by layer upon layer of camouflage netting and thermal blankets. No local aircraft flew near it, no official map marked its existence. They thought that if no one could see it, no one could touch it. But the United States had been watching silently since dawn on the first day. An MC-4C drone cruising 30,000 feet above saw something the human eye could not. Heat. Through the haze, infrared scans painted a living map of Fuerte Laguarita. Dozens of red signatures marked diesel generators, troop bunks, even kitchen ovens inside the compound. Analysts noticed a curious rhythm too. Heat surges at midnight when guards brewed coffee, then sudden drops when watch rotations changed. That rhythm revealed shift patterns, rest zones, and entry points that camouflaged walls couldn't hide. The cartel's illusion of invisibility began to crack. Their confidence came from memory. Older U.S. interdiction missions in the region had stumbled through mud trails and canopy, so dense satellites barely glimpsed the ground. The Tren Delano bosses believed time was still on their side, that weather and distance would swallow any foreign pursuer. But this time wasn't a chase on foot. It was digital warfare from the sky. For 6 straight days, analysts reconstructed every meter of their stronghold. Thermal feeds from drones, motion data from ground sensors, and intercepted truck routes merged into one 3D model. It could be rotated, zoomed, dissected. Every fuel drum, escape path, and water source appeared in color-coded detail. The compound's topographic shield had turned into a transparency sheet for analysts in Florida. There was one gap the cartel didn't even know existed. They believed dense clouds and monsoon systems over the jungle blocked any satellite from seeing through. They were partly right. Optical satellites did struggle. The problem for them was that synthetic aperture radar doesn't wait for clear skies. It reads the ground through rain and night, forming high-resolution terrain images even during storms. Each scan layered over drone footage, sharpening the digital replica of Fuerte Laguarita until it was a mirror copy of the real site. Intercepted radio chatter soon confirmed how deeply they overestimated their cover. Cartel leaders joked that the Americans still see nothing in the dark. They compared their fortress to a ghost ship adrift on land, untouchable because no one knew where to look. Every transmission helped U.S. intelligence locate antenna towers and command rooms. What seemed like defiance was, to the Americans, free navigation data. This misunderstanding went beyond arrogance. Drug militias across South America had learned to rely on nature as a shield. Thick canopy, steep ridges, and fog-heavy valleys had once offered genuine protection. But now the jungle's cover meant little against full-spectrum ISR. Intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Synthetic radar, multi-spectrum drones, and low-orbit satellites created total visibility. The idea of hiding became outdated the moment each of those technologies overlapped. Terrain advantage had turned into a trap. By the sixth night, the analysts could outline every false wall, identify each guard rotation, and even highlight where the vault stored cash and gold. The fortress was mapped from underground fuel lines to rooftop sniper nests. Fuerte Laguarita might still have looked silent from the treetops, but the US already owned its blueprint. Once that illusion vanished, planners shifted focus from seeing the fortress to erasing it in minutes. Just before sunrise, 195 American operators were already deep in the swamp, their faces streaked with mud, their radios whispering short bursts of coded speech. The fortress ahead still slept. None of its guards guessed that 4 assault teams had crawled through the wet darkness for 3 miles, guided only by silent pulses from laser designators connected to the feed of overhead surveillance drones. Each unit moved along a route charted to the inch. Mud sloshed under boots, insects buzzed around optics, and the only light came from faint glows on night vision displays showing the live outlines of the compound. While the jungle pressed silent around them, the air above held something unseen. 2 more layers of US aircraft mapping every heartbeat inside those walls. At 3:58 a.m., Delta Team reached the creek line just west of the fortress and stopped, waiting for the final green signal. To the north, Bravo Team set a pair of small beacons beneath the treetops to mark extraction lanes for helicopters that would later hover in blackout mode. Echo Team, positioned to the south, checked their belts and confirmed synchronization on encrypted channels. No one spoke longer than a second. Every order was delivered by hand signal or a single coded click. It took less than a minute for the perimeter to close without a sound. The compound was effectively surrounded, yet inside, guards leaned on railings, smoking and joking about the noise of frogs and falling fruit. The cartel's early warning system consisted of motion sensors nailed to trees and connected to an improvised laptop near the main gate. When the first sensor flickered, a half-awake guard brushed it off as another animal. He never saw the laser glint sweeping through the mist. The next moment, a guided 40mm grenade burst through the outer checkpoint, shredding sandbag bunkers and throwing debris against the guard post. Gunfire followed in controlled bursts, not wild volleys. Silencers snapped in rhythm, coordinated by the surveillance operators feeding real-time corrections from above. On the eastern ridge, 2 sniper teams called adjustments back to ground squads. They were the eyes that measured distance by sound. Through thermal optics, they watched defenders scramble under flashes of light, firing blindly into trees. Those same snipers identified secondary targets: diesel tanks, radio towers, and the improvised generator shed. Each mark went straight to the air controller, who relayed coded instructions to precision mortars hidden half a mile away. Every hit tightened the circle. Behind the main team, medics worked under tarps setting up triage zones, quietly preparing for evac lifts that no one hoped to need. They marked the clearing with infrared strobes invisible to the naked eye, already thinking about the extraction hours before the first breach. The plan carried a name suited to its rhythm: surround and suffocate. Strike fast from all flanks, push defenders inward until their fire overlaps, then collapse the center. The teams fired from opposite sides of the wall, trapping 80 cartel guards and 40 ELN fighters between converging arcs of gunfire. Most of those men still believed the Americans were miles away, lost in the jungle. Every return shot went into darkness. Radios screamed commands that no one could obey because lines of retreat no longer existed. Panic built as ammunition piled empty. Smoke from burning fuel began choking the courtyard, and visibility dropped to nothing. Fuerte Laguarita's fall ended more than a raid. It erased the illusion that secrecy could protect power. The fortress was beaten long before the shooting began, broken by data, timing, and the unseen eyes orbiting above it. In those minutes, information did what sheer force never could: strip away every advantage born from terrain and fear. Modern warfare now starts with silence, with screens glowing in dark rooms thousands of miles away. Precision rules the battlefield. Subscribe to see more real operations where victory begins before dawn. in the places the enemy still believes cannot be seen.